Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to a channel supporter, MusicBed. Get incredible music for your videos, sign up for a free account. I use MusicBed for this channel and also my professional work with the Evergreen Creative Company. What's up, Tech? It's Josh here. I want to go over some simple tips and tricks of how to get some really good gimbal movement when you're doing real estate kind of videos. Now I'm using the Sony a7S III. I got an ND filter on top of that as well. So you want to get all that kind of stuff onto the camera before you get started, so that way you're not balancing it and then adding an ND filter, and that just changes the weight up. I'm using a Manfrotto gimbal, and all the links will be down below in the video description. So I'm going to put this all together, get it balanced, and then I'm just going to do some different movements that will help kind of just elevate your shots versus just some stagnant looking video. All right, so my biggest complaint about this whole setup is that these foam boxes are cut to size. One of the things I do like about the gimbal is that you can lock down the axes, but you have to undo it just to be able to fit it into the foam box because it's cut to size. Now this is the Arca Swiss plate on top right here that I have mounted to my normal mounting system. So this is what I use on all my cameras. So it just makes sense for me to put it on to here just because I don't have to unscrew all my mounts. So like I said, I got the a7S III here. I got my ND filters. I got some step-up rings, but that's because I use this ND filter with multiple size lens threads. You also want to put the lens, if you have a zoom lens, towards the middle focal length, so that way when you balance it, it's not going to kind of be top or back heavy. If you have a lot of space between the gimbal and the camera, you're going to want to try to get as close to the arm there and then lock that down. You just want to work on each axis, making those micro adjustments. Something to keep in mind is when you make adjustments, you're probably going to have to go back and do another one. For example, this one is all the way at the end, so you're going to have to come over this way. All right, the next part is you're just going to tilt this to the side. If it does a heavy swing action, that means that you need to make an adjustment going back and forth, but it seems like this one's in a good spot. I'll just get it off balance so that way you can see what it does. So when you tilt it to the side, you see how it swung really hard, and I'll do the opposite end so you can see that too. It just swings really hard one direction. So you want to find that sweet spot to where it doesn't do that. And that should be pretty good to go. My next tip is to dial in the lighting settings before you get started as well, because you're not going to have to make adjustments on the camera as you're shooting. Settings in the camera, I shoot in slow motion, so 4K 60 frames per second, so that I can do some speed ramps and things like that in the initial video that I'll be creating. But so with that said, I have a higher shutter speed, which is nice because on a bright day like this, it's going to help, the shutter speed will help darken the image a little bit. Either way, you're still going to have to use your ND filter and pretty much have it at the darkest setting. This is 2 to 5 stop ND filter. And I'm gonna have to increase my aperture a bit. And I use metering to adjust my exposure, so I try to get it on 0 as much as possible. So one of the movements that I do is I just kind of roll and rock back and forth on the balls of my feet, and just kind of take it nice and smooth. And you're not really moving the gimbal much at all, but you're using most of your body, but the gimbal keeps everything nice and smooth and steady. And that just gives you a nice little push-in movement. In addition, that you can do with the gimbal is you can start a little bit high and then kind of lean down into it. And you kind of get this nice little dolly effect. The next, again, is pretty similar. You're gonna spread your feet apart and you're just gonna sway back and forth. You just kind of move back and forth with your knees, and you don't really adjust the gimbal. And then add some movement. So the gimbal turns with the turn of your wrist. And so when you're doing this, what you can do is kind of do like a pivoting movement. So you want to keep a center kind of lock on the subject, and you just kind of pivot with that center point. And those are just like 2 simple movements that you can do already that's going to help elevate your gimbal footage. It's better than just holding it there, like, yeah, it's gonna be a nice steady shot, but you might as well just use a tripod at that point. But just that little subtle movement is all you need with video work. You don't need a lot of movement. You don't have to sit there and go crazy back and forth. You want subtle stuff. So when you're editing, it's a little easier to edit versus trying to do something that has too much movement. The next thing is like what you probably see a lot of gimbal operators do is the ninja walk or gimbal walk is like what we like to call it. So you bend your knees and you move nice and smooth this way. And you try to keep the gimbal at a nice plane. And you do this for all your walking, no matter what you're doing. You want to keep it nice and smooth. Even if you're going to go sideways, you're still going to kind of bend down. No matter what direction or how you're walking, you always want to bend those knees, and that's going to keep the gimbal and camera nice and steady. Another fun movement that you can do with a gimbal is start high and come at the subject and just kind of bring it down that way. And do the same in reverse, so start low and then bring it high. And that's going to just be a nice simple movement that just, again, it just makes more interesting footage. Another fun feature with the A7S III is that you could touch the focus on the screen and it'll track a subject. So I'm gonna do that at the end of the haul there. That way that stays in focus. And this is a reveal shot that I like to use in almost all my videos. You just start from the side. You're just swaying back and forth just like I just showed you. And when I slow this down in post, it's gonna be a nice, slow, revealing shot. If that garage is the focus that I want for this particular shot, this is gonna be a nice reveal for it. So this particular lane right here that's in front of the camera, it has some nice directional lines. So leading lines is another way to put it. And it's gonna make a really nice shot for the video. So again, I'm gonna touch the garage down at the end so my focus stays that way. I'm recording, and you're just gonna walk center shot right to it. All right, so those are just some simple gimbal movements that I wanted to show you that I use on a regular basis. If I don't do anything else besides those, I'm still gonna get some really nice, steady, good-looking gimbal shots. Again, I'm using this Manfrotto gimbal. Overall, it's been a great experience. There's just a couple little nitpicky things like the case I'm not the biggest fan of, and probably my next biggest gripe is the thumbstick. It's just not that, it's not the responsiveness that I like. You can change those adjustments, but it's just not the style that I prefer. Other than that, it takes care of almost all the bases and all the check marks that I look for a gimbal. It takes a heavier payload. You can actually put more weight than what this camera is right now. This is the Tamron 2875, the Sony A7S III, along with the step-up rings and ND filter. It still does pretty well. There's an app that you can download to add on some extra features, some more adjustments, and things like that. So again, overall, I'm pretty happy and satisfied with this, and I'll use this in my kit pretty much anytime I go anywhere. I definitely recommend checking it out. Again, a link will be down in the video description. Thanks for watching. If there's any kind of tips that you think that could be added to this video and someone else might find some value for, let me know down in the comments. Until then, I'll catch you later.